Wonderful. Hi, welcome to our event celebrating Joshua Burton's Fracture Anthology, featuring Vannessa Barnier and N. Cuzzi. I'm Cara Johnson. I'm the events coordinator here for Green Apple Books in San Francisco. This is the time where I encourage all of you joining us to listen to the sound of my voice as I give some brief store business and you make yourself a beverage or get comfortable before we get to the real heart of the matter this evening. Tonight, we're going to hear the work from all three of these poets in honor of Joshua's chapbook, and we'll open it up to a Q&A. I've asked our two other featured poets to open up the space with some questions of their own for the Q&A at the end, but we encourage you, please do enter any questions you have into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen whenever you think of one during the hour, and we'll get to as many as we can by the end of our time together. It's a true gift to be able to celebrate writing with folks who really admire one another so much. So thank you for letting Green Apple be a part of it. And before I introduce our first reader, I am going to go ahead and link to Joshua's chapbook in the chat so you can pick up your own copy of Fracture Anthology for yourself. So first tonight, we are going to hear from N. Cuzzi, who is an artist, musician, and poet living in beautiful San Francisco, California. They graduated with an MFA from St. Mary's College of California, and they've continued to write and serve the literary community in the Bay Area as a bookseller. They're the creator and curator of the Judah Chapbook Library. They were born and raised in the Bay Area and now reside in the fog of the sunset. Please do welcome N. Cuzzi.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here reading for Joshua and with you, Vanessa. You're both incredible. I have so many amazing fond memories of reading with you. And I wish I could turn this camera around and show you, but a murder of crows just landed outside of our living room and are definitely here for the reading too. They just like posted up. So with that, I'm gonna read you guys some poems, and I can't wait to hear you both read after. I'm gonna read to my friends who are here, and you know, I look forward to having you both in my living room with me one day so we can all read together. We jumped off the rocks into that river that fills with milk in the late rose moon. I want to give this to everyone I've loved, to show them that I can be here like this, in my perfect mass, overwhelmed by the sky. I wonder how I hold it all like this, how to never be more at home with it just fucking beaming all down into the dunes and into the water. I walk back to my slow draining tub to sit in the salt water and float. All my old music is about running away. My old face is a passion vine that eats our house. My hands are dirty with bloom clovers. I step where some go to avoid it. I get nude, sleep, get nude, fog, into my childhood streets, once filled with apple blossoms. I don't know what we're built of. The light sockets of our youth, bedroom windows, long hallways. I think our hands are slow dying ferns, opening to the sun and closing again and again. Our legs are river rocks we built predictions and failures of these predictions with. Within two long shadows, the North Star is swinging, crashing into our lovers and best listeners. Our hearts of crushed light bulbs and more are just being crushed and shaken like an instrument. And here we're suspended, slowed fireflies in glass. Around us, like ancient lines of math, evaporate with indifference, just guiding us unknowingly through the tall grass. This is a reminder of our worth, is a field we'll come to know, this liminal candlelit room, where each departed being releases its blessings through the spiritual internet, where all our eyes and sexes inherit death again. Don't worry, it tells me. I tell the boy on the avenue, don't stop playing when the stars fall to low time, in the lowness of humans, and the time forgets us. Ahead of us is the path that leads to the tiny suns, incredible trenches, flat leaf mythics, enchantments. Let's go to the darker room where we listen to Jupiter, where we sit in our short chances and take our clothes off. I want to deconstruct back into the night, just disintegrate, become a free integer, my inner home, my oak, believing out. We are hummingbirds, ascending with our ruby faces, tiny sources of thunder on the lips of California. You might be in Berkeley somewhere, arriving with your internal forces, your clovers in high volume. But our hands are more than broken seashells. It's a lot, isn't it? To unclench your fist like a blooming cactus. Thank you.
Thank you so much to N. Cuzzi, one of my favorite writers, and also people or trees. I'm not sure which one. Always a delight. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Up next, we have Vannessa. And Vannessa, I feel like we've gotten really close in the amount of time before this reading started, but I neglected to ask you how your last name is pronounced.
You already did it, and you did a great job.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, Barnier.
Names are important. I usually ask beforehand, but we're talking about other things. So I'm very pleased to introduce our next reader, Vanessa Barnier, who's a Toronto-based poet, collaborator, facilitator, instigator, and community organizer. Vanessa facilitates writing workshops, hosts the open mic series Legible Intelligibles, and is the author of Sample Platter from Gap Riot Press in 2021. Please join me in welcoming Vanessa Barnier.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here. I have my copy of the chapbook that we're celebrating today. I don't want to be too sentimental, but I love Joshua. I met Joshua. Also, I realized today that it's just a little over our 3-year anniversary. It's happy 3 years, and we've only met once and hung out for like a week, and now forever. So yeah. I also I'm gonna read a couple things tonight, but I wanted to read specifically something I had written on June 22nd of 2019. So I'll start with that, and then I'll move to something else while my computer does a cool thing that no one can see. Okay. Okay, it's called Singing Happy Birthday All Day. because June 21st is my birthday, so that's about me. Okay, singing happy birthday all day. Go to bed because I think I should. Hear the alarm finally turned off in sunrise through walkie-talkies. Wake up dry heaving, rose quartz beside my bed. For the 2 hours of sleep, I drank it in. Crying while they're running, laughing through the courtyard, post-alarm, and I'm heartbroken. They are too, I know, not alarmed, but because of it all. I text Nicholas about the sunrise. He saw it with Manuel. He said we wouldn't want it any other way, but I would. I timed the movie this way, to watch the last bit at sunrise, the last rise, a sneak peek on the walk barefoot. I make them listen to the final song, and I don't know who feels it more, but we all feel the rocks on the ground, except for Shoed Joshua, but I think we all feel it eventually. And my feet are sore and I like it. And my feet are sore and I like it. It's the second night of this and I'll miss it. I don't think I'll do it back home, and I worry for what else I won't do. That's the first one. The next thing I'm gonna read, I'm not timing. I haven't been timing. Don't be mad at me. This is called Dog Yawn. I stand on the street corner waiting for the crossing signal, and I see a man standing beside me with 2 golden retrievers. The man yawns, and without looking at the other man, one of the dogs yawns too. I say, "Excuse me, after you just yawned, one of your dogs did too." And he says, "Did he?" And he bends down to one of his dogs and says, "Did you?" And he knows which one did it too. Okay, I'm going to read a COVID poem. And then I'll stop. I literally, maybe it's also only been a minute. Car.
You're doing great. Keep going.
Okay.
You have like 5 minutes left.
Oh my God. Okay, well, we got so much. Okay. All right, this is called COVID test. My heart is racing and I check the clock and it says 6 a.m. and the bed is damp. I feel wet and it's cold. I don't like it. This is unusual for me, both the sweating the bed and being awake at 6 o'clock, unless I'm driving to see the sunrise with a friend, but today I'm not, so this scares me. Must be COVID. I remember my dream but almost forget it, and will forget it eventually, but at this time, since I'm wet and uncomfortable, I will write it down, and I take my phone and write in my notes app. Weird elope dream, but there was maybe a kid involved. I wasn't me, more Philip Seymour Hoffman. The person proposing opened the box on one knee and it wasn't there. We hired kids to try to find it, including one on a scooter. Other dreams included shared apartment my dead uncle came to. It was summer and he checked my answering machine. This dream didn't have the mall, but that's a common motif for me, especially since COVID, where no one wears masks and I'm getting lost in the mall. It happens a lot. I try to write them all down, but sometimes I can't. I like telling people about my dreams, but sometimes they say our brains are different, and that scares me. After writing down my dream, I can get back to my main fear, which is that I have COVID. I call Shoppers. In Canada, that is like a drugstore. For anyone out there who doesn't know what Shoppers is. I call Shoppers, a drugstore, and they get me in that evening, so I book it. I show up and wait. One of the people working there takes my information and health card and runs me through a questionnaire. They ask if I have any symptoms, and at the beginning of COVID, okay, so this is a Canadian poem. This is for the Canada Council, Ontario Creates Grant. It's not, but so a lot of the rules that apply to me don't apply to you. So maybe this was the wrong poem to read. And as I'm talking, I realize that. I'm so sorry, Joshua, for ruining. I have ruined your launch, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. Well, I'm gonna finish it. We're already in it. Well, how does it end? We gotta know. Okay. Well, you know what? Actually, I kind of explain what goes. Anyway, okay. So I show up and wait. One of the people working there takes my information and health card. We have health cards here. Do you have health cards here? And runs me through a questionnaire. They ask if I had any symptoms. And at the beginning of COVID, you had to have symptoms in order to get tested. So I say I have a sore throat, and she says, "What?" And I say, "It's just a tickle, but it's been there." And she says she can't give me the test if I have symptoms. If I have symptoms, I have to go to the hospital to get a test. And I don't want to go to the hospital, so I say that I lied. Because I did lie. Because I just want this stupid test. And she says, "What?" And I tell her I lied. And I lied because at the beginning of COVID, you have to have symptoms in order to get the test. So I lied to get it. And she says she can't give me the test. And I say, "Why? I don't have any symptoms." And she says, you said you had a sore throat. And I said, yes, because I was lying. And she says, well, you said you do, so I can't give it to you. And I said, I need this test because I'm visiting my parents tomorrow. This is another lie. And I need a negative test. And she says she won't do it and hands back my health card. And I say, what are you, 8? And she says, what am I, 8? And I say, that's right. And she says, I'll get the pharmacist. And I say, yes, get the pharmacist. And the pharmacist comes over and asks me what is going on. And I explain that at the beginning of COVID, you had test symptoms in order to get the test. So I lied to get it because it's important to me that I visit my parents. So I lied and said I had a sore throat to make sure I could get the test. And the person who works here told me you don't do tests here when you have symptoms, which I didn't know and I misunderstood. And now she won't give me the test that I have booked because I lied. And I'm so sorry I lied, but I just really need this test. The pharmacist nods and goes through the rest of the questionnaire with me, and everything checks out, and she makes sure the rapid test is okay, and I say yes, and she administers it, and then says I have to wait for 15 minutes, so I do. I look at all of the nail polish, and someone breaks a bottle of perfume on the floor, and I like this because perfume is tricky and hard to clean up, and it stinks real bad, and this is not a problem, you can just mop up. And the 15 minutes passes, and my test is negative, and my only real problem is that I had a bad dream, and that happens a lot, but it doesn't usually make me sweat, and that also isn't a symptom of COVID. So that's that one. Okay, should I do one more or should I stop talking?
Do one more.
Okay. I just wrote this one. I've been getting some massages recently. So it's about getting a massage. I should have thrown it on my other computer like I did with this one, but I can do it actually. Okay, sorry, I'm stalling. Massages, they cost $100, and that's kind of like a session in therapy, which is like for your brain, but this is like therapy for your body, but the brain and body are connected. So it's kind of like I'm just paying for even more therapy, which is great. As I do this, I cannot see the faces of my friends and the disappointment. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, even though everyone is certainly mad at me right now, which is fair. Okay, I got it. Don't worry. I'm opening it up again. Let's see the disappointment. No, everyone's smiling. Okay. I'm excited to get a massage. I haven't had one before because I haven't had benefits for it and I couldn't justify the expense. Plus, I'm never looking to upset anyone. All I mean by that is that there is only one person who touches my body and it's my girlfriend. And myself too, but that's a given. I guess my girlfriend touching me is a given too. My benefits are not a given though. I had to wait 3 months for them. My girlfriend didn't have to wait that long. To touch me, I mean. I waited about 11 years. That's different though. But I did have probation at work and now that's done. I can get my massage now. I found this RMT through a friend. They said this RMT said your collarbone should be like little logs going down a stream, which is your shoulders, where they travel out and down. I liked that, so I booked an appointment. I arrived 10 minutes late for no real reason besides my own personal problems with punctuality, which are ongoing and unresolvable. The elevator didn't come, so I took the stairs. When I turned right, there was a door, and the RMT had just poked her head out, and I scared her. I didn't mean to be off to a bad start, but that's often how it goes. We went through the routine questions. I mentioned that when I raised my arms up and then back down that it made a grinding sound, and she said, yes, your muscles are guitar strings, and they're wound tightly so they're twanging over your bones. I am a skeleton. I look at her face and I imagine the skull behind her skin. She told me she would knock when she came back and asked that I'm ready before coming in. Once she was gone, I got undressed as quickly as possible because I didn't know when she would be back and I wanted to be ready. I kept my underwear on, which felt appropriate. I got onto the table and felt humiliated by my naked imp-like movements onto the bed, raising one leg high and then under the sheet. I laid on my back with my hands at my sides. Never had I been so aware of my arms. I heard a knock and then, can I come in? And I yelled yes. She came in and said it was good I said it so loudly because sometimes people don't call out loud enough. Is this a general issue or does it not apply? I suggested she have a dog toy or a clown horn that people could squeeze rather than controlling the volume of their voice. She agreed and then went to the light switch. The next issue was the lights. She asked if I wanted the lights off, and I did, but I was worried it would feel romantic. She said we could try it and turn them off. She said, I like to call this cave mode. Where am I? The lights off felt better, less like I could be examined. I wonder who keeps the lights on. I mean, generally. She came to the table and told me to roll over onto my stomach. I did and put my face into the head pillow, which is like a toilet seat, but there's no water underneath. She pulled back the blanket and tucked it into the elastic of my underwear. I swallowed hard enough to make my ears. I swallowed hard enough so that my ears made things a bit quieter for a moment. She put a hand on my shoulders, and I was immediately worried my girlfriend would be upset with me, or her. She massaged my arm down to my hands, pulling on each finger. I tried to count the time she spent on each finger to see if she spent more time on my ring finger. That would be something for me to look out for. That would be an indicator. I am vigilant. I am not married, but it's still worth investigating. She put my hand down and went behind my head to my shoulders. I didn't count a difference. What happened to your eyebrows? I don't skip a beat because I don't have to. I opened the oven and I looked inside faster than anyone else. And this lump? Hands on my neck. I don't want to talk about it. Well, you have to. My girlfriend wouldn't like me trusting other people with my secrets. I know some of my body isn't a secret, the exposed stuff, but most of my body, the majority, is a secret. I shouldn't even be here. It's a scar from when I got in a car accident. Who was driving? I was. This is too much information. She is getting to know me. Was it your fault? It wasn't my fault. It was my girlfriend's. I don't blame her or hold it against her, but I think about it when I think about my scar when the RMT touches me. Yes, I say. We stopped talking after this. The massage continued until it didn't. I got up and dressed, and this time the RMT didn't knock to check when I was done because she didn't need me anymore. My girlfriend did still, though, I hoped. Even though there was suspicious parts, there seemed like nothing to report. My girlfriend could get mad about many things, and maybe this was something I had to be careful about. I leave the room, and the RMT isn't there, so I leave the office and take a right. I get in the car and call my girlfriend. What is it now, Brian? All done.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, documentarian of everyday magic, Vannessa Barnier. Thank you so much. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our last and honored poet this evening. I'm delighted to be included in this celebration of his chapbook. So thank you, Joshua, for including us. Joshua Burton is a poet and educator from Houston, Texas, and received his MFA in poetry at Syracuse University. He's a 2019 Tin House Winter Workshop Scholar, 2019 Juniper Summer Writing Institute Scholarship winner, 2019 Center for African American Poetry and Poetics Fellowship finalist, and received the honorable mention for the 2018 Toy Darracott and Cornelius Eady Chapbook Prize. It's also a 2020 Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing finalist. His work can be found in Mississippi Review, Gulf Coast, The Rumpus, Tri-Quarterly, Black Warrior Review, Grist, and the Indiana Review. His debut poetry collection is forthcoming in the spring of 2023 with the University of Wisconsin Press. And his chapbook, Fracture Anthology, out from Zine Press, is the reason we're here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Joshua Burton.
Thank you so much, Green Apple Books, for inviting me for this reading. And also thank you so much, Nick and Vanessa, for reading with me, because it's a huge honor to be able to actually read with y'all again. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do it in person in the future. And also, Vanessa, could you put your chapbook in the chat too, so they can see that as well?
It's sold out, so no one can ever have it, sorry.
Hopefully once it's restocked, they can look out for it. I'm gonna start by reading a few poems from the chapbook, and then I'm gonna read some of the newer work that is from the debut collection that's gonna come out next year. I'm actually gonna start with the poem that is actually connected to the cover, and I can talk about the connections a bit later on. But first poem is called History, and it's in the voice of my mother. History. I always wanted either 3 or 6 children. As a girl, I would draw 3 lines on the doll's face. 1 red, 2 black. She was made of paper from a 60s beauty magazine. Her torso is an upside down triangle dress. The body can be broken into thirds. I know this now. One night, my father will come home late with a rifle in his hands, yelling, "I'm here." Everyone will laugh. Every corner of the ocean is the same. My brother came home with 2 black eyes today. My son in his 20s will later say that he would kill him if he could. My father was the provider of fear at home. I would spend years darting history, like my mother hiding money from him. My other brother, Benny, said he can't function without a drink. My son will later say the same. The doll's arm tears by accident. Even after I cut my hair for her, I want to be her. She is tunnel-like. I use her to move me. I move through her sometimes, like wind through a reed, like water through a wooden raft. Not to pivot her, but to crown me, and to lessen the look from everyone towards me. Tell me something new about how it hurts us. The next poem I'm going to read is called Waltz. And this actually, for a big chunk of the process of writing the book, this is actually the title of the book. And then at the very end, I changed it to Fracture Anthology. But in my head, I kind of feel like this is somewhat still the title poem of the book. Waltz. And her grief is momentarily put into her parentheses. A little apostrophe hangs from her arms, angling him down, head first, baptismal, whirling him around, flimsy as filament, their allegorical dance, legs dangling and swaying like chandeliers. The young mother hoists her son up above her head to stop his crying. Words are bodies, they pray and break when born. She removes their shoes to feel the Pacific marble, and he stands on her toes like a paperweight stone. And the next poem I'm going to read is called Letting Go of the Lyric. And it's actually the final poem in the chapbook. And it's a retelling of the Sylvia Plath poem, Ariel. Shall I smother you while soaring through fields, white grass, the aftermath of a morning sun flooding in? The steed stills the wind it passes through, and teeth biting words like air, black hair being tucked to dirt as hooves unearth something buried. Full, fey, not returning to totem like water to its catcher, but awakening like sips enchanting the field as my tail dips and rises. So I'm gonna pivot to some poems from my book that's coming out next spring. And the chapbook was just directly about the life of my mother, and this new book is just kind of encapsulating a lot of different things. So the first two poems I'm going to read is about a friend who passed away a few years ago. Man in a hole. When last was it when you couldn't distinguish blackness from the hole in the earth? I can see now too, how the creased shadow mimics my standing here. The hole that holds Linda too is black. And the handholds that held her before this one was black as well. At the base of this stone, the vase hands let the bouquet rest on his neck scent reddening. Red has the tendency to stand out in any assortment of colors, its accent shadowing the brights. If we could rely on the body's timing, we could make a color mean resilience or surety. or I could have loved her or married her alive, if at least for protection, to separate her from that death rhythm we call Passover silence. I carry with me a Houston crease in my brain. It helps me forget that life once was a metaphor for afterlife. Over there, even the trees are scared, asking forgiveness as their bodies wanting to be seen as the night puts on its black mask. And it takes a whole lot of time for me to come back to this masked garden and lapse back to remember the man who removed her life. Black hands looks like mine. I couldn't look her mother in the eye. At the wake, I kept getting second glances from her cousins. I wanted to tell them I am not of mask, but of a dark mass mattering in public spaces. And I wanted to tell them nothing of it. I'd wrestle with my face, but there are limits to this, a madness in which I am a soft cloak letting drop. How could I not be born in the new birth, in the aftermath of this? I've been saying sorry all the way into the future, where all my memory is scared for the hereafter. And a Houston crease in the earth, over there, with cranes and cement, the city sirens itself in a cistern. I pass over her, half shadowing her yard home. I am a time-sensitive thing. I hold my whole mask accountable. This is another poem about the same friend who passed away. The worst Houston for Linda. When the body is unbodied, all that is left are myths. A seasonal city failing to know itself, a celestial break in the air. As a child, when I'd break my toy, I'd hide it. When I finally lose my mind, my feet would be the first to go. Sunday mornings, David would call, asking me to visit the grave with him, and he's on his way. I live with the fear of all of the women of my life dying before me. When he arrives, we get on our knees to clean the granite. From afar, I bet the body looks like a black dog behind water. This death is Houston at its very worst, more worse even than at the death of Carl Hampton, that panther who curved like a branch at his end. Back then, my father was a boy watching the Panthers march along Allen Parkway Village. When I was a boy of 5, my hand touched the hot kitchen iron with the curiosity of my 5-year-old mouth kissing my neighbor. At the wake, in a Catholic ritual I did not understand, David wrapped a white cloth around my head for you. Later Sundays, I think we deserve beauty here too. At the grave, we clean your stone, a stained glass plate, your small oval photo, looking up. Like you sometimes, I want to open up the sky, climb inside like a sunroof to a blue sports car. I too only love God when I'm greedy. When I'm home from the grave, walking into my mother's room is like walking into a coma. She wants me to wash my feet and doesn't want me touching her. On those Sundays, I usually arrive at the grave a little early, minutes before David, thinking maybe it is too much to talk to you, but I talk to you, saying things like, help me find another word for sympathy or sorry, and wanting you to say, come to my home, touch my hands, I'll keep whatever you leave. I'm gonna read one last poem, and it's the title poem for the new manuscript that's coming out next spring. The poem is called Grace Engine. I love all the dead, both at the moment they unwed themselves of shame, and before that. The two men who think they will never die are two opposing laws, the will to live and the will to live a little longer. In a room in June full of bike parts, empty Bic lighters in Greece, N takes 10 minutes to open the door, and I am afraid for him. We are like brothers, like canyons, a fulmination between us, all red, all black. My real brother once, while half asleep, put a hot iron against his cheek, thinking it was the phone. It is hard to tell the truth, and it is hard to be in a room with so many words, the walls with holes the size of fists. N pulled the pistol from his jeans and placed it in the space between his ear and eye, like creating an extra sense and pointing to it. Once before, he told me if I were to suicide, he would piss on my grave. Again says, there would be a God at the end of me. Sada Shakur says, some people spell God with one O, while others spell it with two. To be in a room like this, full of white ghosts and ropes tied together in little black knots is the opposite of being anywhere. After I fought the gun away from him, that hinge of metal between my fingers was human animal. Our fingers in the holes in the metal made us whole as a woman before machining out her second life. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you, Joshua. You're a phenomenon. Wow, thank you so much. You're like, that was like a prayer. Thank you so much. Like what a gift, truly. Thank you. And congratulations on this and everything. I'm gonna turn this over to our dear friends and Cuzzi and Vanessa Barnier, who I've asked to open up the space with some questions for Joshua. And I would encourage you all, our dear audience, if you have any, to enter them in our Q&A at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to as many as we can.
Joshua, first, I want to say thank you for reading for us. It's always a pleasure to hear you read. And it's always a pleasure to like hear your work. It's so beautiful. And I'm really excited for your book coming out next spring. That is so cool, so well deserved. You work so hard, and your work, I think, reflects the work that you put into it. Your writing does. It's gorgeous. One of the questions that I had for you as I was reading this, and that I was sitting with a lot, was what it took for you to inhabit this work, or if the work inhabited you. I know for me, when I'm writing about either my family or anything like that, sometimes it can be, it's just a lot. It's very intense to be present with that. And as I was reading this, I was thinking about how this work was like sitting inside of you, and yeah, how it inhabited you and what it was like writing it, and carrying it. I thought about that too a lot, of like, what was it like to carry this collection inside you until it was out? And that was just something that was on my mind the entire, as I read the entire, I don't know, the entire collection.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was It's very interesting. Some more background information about the book is, I think I started writing like in 2013. And I kind of just had the urge to just want to write about my mother because we've always had like just a really strong connection, and I always felt this, I guess, twinness with her. And so I wanted to like, I just write about her to honor her, and she's still alive, but I just wanted to like, it was a way to like show her grace. And I told her I wanted to write about her. She said that she would be okay with it. And then she offered me up like her journals, like that she's been like collecting for like 30 plus years. And she was like, you can use this to help write your poems. So I have like the connection already, but then I got a chance to have this deeper sort of understanding of like this very interiority of her. And at first I was really eager to like work on the project, but once I started reading the journals, I started to feel the weight of it, and like so it was like this extreme pressure to represent her in an honest way and like respectful way, respecting her experiences and like her memories and all these things. So it was like yeah, some of those poems in the book was just extremely hard to write. And I just feel like just a tremendous amount of pressure on myself to try to capture like authentic voice from her. And but then after I started writing a few years, it got a lot easier. And I guess the difficulty with that is I wasn't sure if I was like just becoming better at writing the idea of her, or actually writing her. And then it just all these kind of questions would come up of like, can you actually truly inhabit another person, even if you love that person dearly? And I think the conclusion I came to is you actually can't. But I think there's something in that attempt and that desire of reaching out that I still kind of hold like hopefully dear to me. So it was very, very difficult. The process was very difficult at times, especially when the poems that I can tell us things that she's never told other people before. So just trying to capture an authentic version of her, and just trying to remove myself as much as possible. But there's like a limit to that, I think. And I've like ran into that limit many times while writing the collection. But yeah, the weight was like very heavy, but it's also, and I think understanding her in many ways helped me actually understand myself. So I think I needed to first write this book before I can actually write my next collection, because I was actually able to write about myself after like understanding her and my connection to her.
Thank you. No, that's really beautiful. I think that's I think that's totally an impulse to respect. Sometimes we, have to write our way through things. I think like we have to honor that thing inside of us, like whenever it happens, like whether it's difficult or not. I think that's really well said. And yeah, beautiful. Vanessa, do you have a question for Joshua?
Yes. I think this question can also kind of build off what Nicholas was just asking you. Sorry, I'm laughing because of my joke from earlier where I said I was going to take all of Nicholas's questions. I'm not, just so I can clear that up right now.
No, that's I'm thank you for not stealing.
Yeah, it could have scared you, and so I just wanted to not scare you anymore. Okay. Like I think there's a lot of, you're writing your mom, like the parent-child relationships, and like you're talking about like writing me next, and like, talking about embodying what we've written, like how I guess the way I want to word it is kind of like, when you think about writing me next, where does the separation actually lie? Because I feel like these like parent-child relationships, we echo those in our life. So like this collection does feel very much you. So I wonder what that departure kind of looks like in your mind.
Yeah, the departure may even just be like the confidence to write about myself in a more direct way, because yeah, because I do feel like, and there's definitely poems in the chapbook that I do feel like I know how I feel about a certain situation or a certain thing that happened, and I'm completely removing that to highlight my mom's perspective on that. But I do think there's a lot of like me in there, like a lot of different ways. That's almost like a shield that, in a way, is almost like maybe I wasn't even brave enough to write about myself like directly, So maybe I think in some ways that writing through her was almost like me finding myself or finding my voice or finding like my confidence to like write about myself like in these situations. So I think it was almost just like a process yeah, 'cause I definitely am in a lot of those poems in the collection. Even some of the poems are in my voice. And I just think that I couldn't write about myself for like my first book. I think it was just I needed like that processing through through the person who created me kind of thing of like I think there's like something like looking back to that and then having to go forward after that was like important. That sort of process just had to it was a good thing to filter myself through because once I finished that book it was just like complete vulnerability. I was like I had nothing else to kind of like to shield me from myself. And I think in ways the chapbook was a way for me to kind of do that. But and that's why I think the new work it feels like so vulnerable and like I'm so like straightforward because the processing through the chapbook has helped me do that.
I know we're supposed to open this up for other people's questions, but I just feel like my next question kind of builds off this. So can I just I'm just gonna sneak this in here. Just in the continuity, kind of in like the continuity of like our art, ourselves, our body, where we come from, when we step into a point when we can like depart from ourselves, you know, that one of the questions I was also thinking about, and I'm glad you read your poem history. That's one of my favorite poems in your collection, and one of the things I was obsessed with when I read it was the inertia of the line, the inertia of the poem, especially towards the end. There feels like this like intense kind of like gravity that like pulls me down to the page, down to the end of the page, wants me, you know, to kind of continue into it. But I feel I hear that in your work a lot. And what it made me think about is like, where did you find the inertia to continue writing this? You know, when you wrote one poem in this space, thinking about your mom, thinking about family, like what made you write another one? Where did the inertia keep coming from that kept pulling you through and kind of like filled out this collection? I'm really interested in like where that, you know, where that energy came from and where the inertia came from. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually just hit me that the poem history is actually like I think it's the last poem I wrote for the collection actually. I think it's like it's almost so much so that it was kind of like I was already writing a couple poems or like or having ideas for poems for the next manuscript. And I wrote that one like sort of this in-between space. And actually, I guess I keep forgetting that because it feels like it doesn't feel like that for me when I read it now. But yeah, so it's like an interesting, I think some of the maybe stylistic things in that poem is something I kind of carried on to the newer work. I think of inertia, I think once I started writing the book, it's just like it was just nonstop. I think it was like maybe a few times, a few months where I couldn't write, but for the most part, the poems would they would happen really, really fast, and I was writing at like a speed I don't think I've ever written at before or like since then. It was just like sometimes a poem a week, and and I felt like it had such like a rich sort of place to grab from. Like it was the letters, but also just like my personal experiences of like stories I heard, situations that happened with me and my mother, just like all these like wealth of these stories and these histories that exist. That it was like a really fulfilling process, just because I feel like there was just like so much coming out of me, and it was like very easy to write about her. And I think about the question from earlier. I think at a certain point, it got so easy that it made me kind of take a step back to realize that maybe it shouldn't be this easy to write about my mother and write in my mother's voice. That's why I had to kind of like constantly check myself after every like little bit to be like, are you overstepping too much? Are you putting yourself in the poems too much? Are you like are you centering her like you kind of promised that you would, like to yourself at the beginning? So yeah, it was like a constant push and pull, but even in that, it was just like very, very easy to write these poems. Like there was almost like flooding out of me, just like yeah, I think just all the wealth of history and the wealth of the letters and the journals was like made it a lot easier to like um, have this just kind of flow out of me in that way.
Vanessa, if you have another question for Joshua, I would love to hear it. And I have a question myself, but I would like to hear yours first. And if we have any audience questions, we'll get to them afterward.
Sure. You know, you were talking a little bit earlier about like that, like a lot of this is homage, and I was just wondering, kind of like you know, uh, when it like there's a point I think in writing when you're like, I'm doing it, like this is it, like what I'm doing feels good and right, and I'm honoring what I'm trying to do. Like I'm wondering, like, do any pieces or even a part of a piece come to mind when you're where you felt like you were like, this is it, like I'm doing exactly what I should be doing, and like it feels right.
Yeah. When you said that, like the exact semester actually came to mind. It was the second semester. I think I was like in a creative writing or like a poetry forums class, and maybe towards the middle of the class, it's when I had the idea to start writing it, and it was like the fall of 2013. And then the next semester I had the same teacher, and it was like a poem a week. And a lot of those poems during that class are like still some of my favorites. I think those poems, but I felt like I um, was capturing the letters in a very authentic way. And I feel like that's like that balance is like I feel like the most perfect. But the first one that comes one of the first ones that comes to mind is a poem called Break. And it's about my mother bathing my brother, who's like the oldest child, in the kitchen sink. And it's about this conflict that interior like conflict that she was very complex ideas that she was dealing with internally. And I think I felt like I captured that on the page. I think being able to capture like this kind of psychological state of like someone who's dealing with post-traumatic postpartum depression and things like this, it felt like that was like a moment where I was like, I think I'm like doing it. Like I think I'm like there, almost there, or like getting there. And I think that was like just a moment where I felt like I'm on the right path, and I don't feel like I'm like second guessing the entire process. Maybe like little moments I second guessed, but as a whole, I feel like I'm doing the something that um, seems right in some way.
I have a visual art question. So I know Fracture Anthology has cover art and then art inside from Zumbabico. And let me know if I'm not saying their name correctly, but I have a couple of questions, and I think it's incumbent on where exactly in the process that art came in, whether it was post the writing of the book or whether it was kind of always intended to be included, like what relationship between the visual art and writing was initially there, and then was there anything that kind of grew or new meaning that grew out of the pairing either after or whenever it came into the process for you?
Yeah, I'll actually post the artist's Instagram. So yeah, it's a Colombian illustrator named Zumbambiko, and yeah, so actually I had the entire collection complete, and we've been like friends from like our time in Syracuse, and she read some of the poems and was like really I guess moved by them to want to like illustrate them, and and she just wanted to like, yeah, we wanted to like do some collaborations. So she basically took the poems that maybe had the most connections with, or maybe felt she can pull from the most, and ended up being three at first. And then she said these images kind of flown out of her. It was like maybe similar to the process of me writing them. Her process of like creating these illustrations were like very similar. So it was a very like kind of well-oiled like sort of connection, like the well-oiled machine, where it was easy for us to kind of collaborate in that instance. And even as recent as like last month, we actually did another collaboration event in Houston, and she did 7 more illustrations. Actually, one of them is actually behind me on the wall. and she did more illustrations for the event, and we kind of have this collaboration event when the chapbook came out. So yeah, it was a very, very like easy flowing collaboration. And I think next in the process, we maybe want to try something even in reverse where I'm actually writing off of her illustrations. But yeah, it's been a very, very like wonderful collaboration between us. And I'm really looking forward to doing more work with her.
That's so cool. What a special relationship to have. It's so rare to hear like, yeah, it was really easy for both of us and we were equally inspired by one another and just making cool shit like from one another and continue to. What a really cool relationship. Okay. Yeah.
I'm not done.
Go ahead.
One, I think that artists should be working with poets more frequently. I think that for some reason, poetry is not seen as a medium that a lot of people mix with as much. I feel like there's a lot more like visual and musical stuff that happens with each other or illustrative. I don't know. I think poets, if anyone is watching this, go and make art with your friends that make other art, because you're going to learn a lot from them. And I think that like other people who don't make poetry go like work with poets. Like there's like a beautiful thing that happens when art informs itself with each other. And I really think that that was actually some of the best advice one of my mentors ever gave me was instead of going to so many poetry readings, spend a couple nights you might be going to a poetry reading and go to an art show instead, or go listen to music and try to build horizontally with other artists. And I think that's like a really important thing that we should all keep in mind. I do have a crowd question too from my housemate for Joshua, if that's okay. And he asked, Houston seems to have deeply affected you and your relation to the subject matter of your work. I'm curious if you feel that it has also affected your writing or style of writing itself.
Yeah, I think I didn't see a huge connection with myself in Houston as a writer or a person until I left Houston. And then in Syracuse, I started to kind of see like all the Houston aspects or these details about Houston, about my experience in Houston, and just my experience just, it's simply just kind of going to school and just all these things of living life in Houston starts to just kind of come up in my work in different ways. I also think, yeah, thinking of Houston and family too is also just like, to me, it's hard to kind of separate those two things because there's such a huge, of course, like connection with that. So I think they become synonymous in different ways. So leaving Houston felt like it's also connected to like leaving family. And for me in Syracuse is also in a way like almost leaving like a Black community. And I think that did a lot for the book that's coming out next year. I think, you know, to have to see yourself in a space that is like you feel like foreign in, it almost makes you hyper visible in a way. And I think that's an aspect that actually affected the next book a lot, of that separation from family. And I think it made myself just hyper visible in these kind of foreign spaces. And I felt like kind of exposed in these spaces as well. So it brought out a lot of I guess feelings and a lot of like things that I didn't realize I was dealing with until I had to like be separated from that. So I think maybe that's like in a sort of roundabout way of also being like connected to Houston as like an actual place.
Thank you so much. I think that's about all the time we have. I'm exceedingly grateful to all three of you. Give one more cheers for N. Cuzzi and Vanessa Barnier, and one more big congratulations to you, Joshua Burton. Thank you so much for joining us and for letting us be here together, giving us an excuse to be here.
Your work is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can't wait to see more. So really, yeah,
Oh,
and thank you.
I'm going to link to the chapbook one more time in the chat for all.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much, Nick and Vanessa, for like reading with me. It was like a true pleasure to be able to read with you.
Absolutely. And Vanessa, thank you. And Car, thank you for hosting.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
So
you.
nice. I've been looking forward to this for however long. Yeah, this is really beautiful. And thanks for answering our questions also. It's nice to hear more about like the behind the scenes. So thanks for indulging us.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for joining us out there from wherever you are, and we'll see you next time. Bye.